All right. Well, near as I can tell, it is a Monday, and we are live, although for some reason, I can't seem to unmute my man here. That's not great. There we go. There we go. Now he's unmuted. So now I can hear Abel, and Abel can hear me. So life is good. Good afternoon, Abel, and welcome here to Between Chair and Keyboards. Good to see you. I mean, I just saw you last week, so I mean, it was nice to see you in person, and now I get to hang out with you here on the Twitch stream. So good afternoon. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me and for tolerating me the other week.
No, it was great. We had a lot of fun, last week in Atlanta. So it was good to hang out with you, and we got to share some good food. And although I do apologize somewhat for taking you to a Spanish restaurant in the U.S., I didn't really think that through. I probably should have taken you to like some Southern cuisine or something, maybe some barbecue. But I mean, it was pretty good though, right? Like you enjoyed dinner, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss that if you want. Now that there is some distance between us and I feel safer. I mean, the food was excellent. It's just that the concept of Spanish food was kind of evolved. It was more like, these Asian fusion restaurants?
Yes.
It was kind of a Spanish fusion restaurant.
Well, and that's fair, right? That's fair. I think that's even how that restaurant would probably have characterized itself. We are talking about Cooks and Soldiers in Atlanta, which is one of my all-time favorites. In fact, when I am in Atlanta and I open the Uber app, it does suggest Cooks as the place that I should go, and it's usually right. I usually hit Cooks at least once when I'm in the Atlanta area, so well worth your time. But I do feel a little guilty about that. So thank you for indulging us, and Alberto as well for indulging our desire to go there. But the system works. So how did you get into this weird technology space? Give me your origin story. We'll see where that kind of leads us. I know we're going to talk more about Spain. That's one of my all-time favorite places. So I'm excited about that. But let's start with, what's your background? How'd you get into technology? How'd you find your way to Spring?
Okay, how far do you want to go?
As far back as you want to go. We have nearly unlimited time.
Okay, there was a small kid back in a small town near Barcelona that they didn't have much at home, but the only thing he wanted was, hey, I like computers. And someday my father, I don't know why, they went out computer. I was a lot into machines, and everything that I could dismantle and break at home, I did it. I'm talking like 7-8 years old.
Yeah.
Like plugs and things, and all my toys, I dismantled them. Everything that has an engine, I was going to dismantle it to see how the engine worked. And I guess it's the same for a lot of people. I also had there's a Spanish version of Lego, so I had many of those. That's also part of my youth. And one day when our typing machine, for anyone in the audience, yes, I did use a mechanical typing machine when I was at the school to do my work.
Me too.
Yeah,
been there.
It's not that far. And when the typing machine broke, the fancy thing back then was electrical typing machines that allow something as amazing as you could type a line, so you could make correction and then press enter and write the whole line. That was amazing. No more having to fix a sign or a letter in the paper directly, and having to type or move one position and type another letter on top many times.
Right.
And my father, I don't know why, decided, hey, why don't buy a computer? And I think that was it. 486 or 486?
Oh yeah, 486. Yeah.
Yeah, 66 megahertz. 6 megabytes of RAM and 204 megabytes of
more
disk.
Than enough for anybody.
Yeah, exactly, 6 megabytes. I mean, I could have like 3 or 4 games in a floppy disk, so that was more.
Of course. Yeah, they used to be very small, unlike what we have today. So, so Thindel apparently did the same thing, and you too, Thindel, by the way. So thanks for joining us here. And so he also likes to tear things apart, and agreed. Not that we understand, we just tear it apart. It's kind of fun to do that sometimes. My son, at one point, I was dissing a tower that I had built many eons ago, and I was finally going to get rid of it, recycle it, and I wanted to pull the hard drive out. And so I ripped it apart, and my son really thought that was pretty fascinating. And I was showing him all the innards and the guts and everything, and I pointed at a laptop and I said, so, all of this, it's in that thing over there too, except it's much smaller. And he looked over at the laptop and looked back at the thing and said, can we take that apart too? And I'm like, no. So luckily I did get my hands on like a really old MacBook, and we did rip that apart, and he thought that was pretty cool as well. So I think that's almost like a rite of passage, isn't it, to tear apart some kind of a
it's the first step, right, for everyone. It's like, okay, I cannot build something, but I can look into how something else is built and learn from it, and then take my own ideas. And luckily build it again, and it's working again.
Phil wanted to know, did you have a 486 DX or SX? If you can
DX2.
Whoa, okay, all right, there you go.
Yeah, but there was already, I think the first Pentiums were already in the market.
Sure.
Yeah, I had like another relative in the family that was already working in IT. Yeah. And my father told him like, okay, something for the kids that it's not very expensive, so that if they break it, it's not going to be an issue. And he told he recommended that. Back then I had no idea what I was choosing. I was just happy.
I mean, computer's a computer, and I can play the simple little game on it. Well, and that was the era of computing that I remember so vividly, that you would buy a machine, and 6 months later, a new machine's out that is twice as fast, twice as much RAM. Everything was fast. I mean, the Moore's law was just screaming. And I even remember like buying a new machine and kind of lamenting that. And at the place we bought it, they're like, well, what are you going to do? You need a machine, and away you go. So there you go. Well, let's see. Findle ripped apart an old matrix printer, gave my dad a heart attack when I connected one of the motors, and somehow managed to get the LEDs to light up. Fantastic.
See, that's how you learn. I mean,
right.
There will be some casualties.
Yeah, hopefully you don't burn down the house or injure yourself. Or as long as it doesn't end in a trip to the emergency room, how bad could it be? I invented electricity. He thought I'd plug it into the wall. Yeah, that's good time.
No, I wasn't that brave. And also I knew that if I broke it, probably there was not going to be anything else until a long time. In fact, that first computer, it was not renewed until tinkering. It kind of exploded, literally. Yeah. And there's a sad story because I kept the processor literally broke in half, and I had the processor, and I lost it. I don't know where I put it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Glenn says that he repaired a teletype and made it into a printer, and I think Findle's challenging that assertion. Yeah. I think I'm not sure how to read that, but it's.
But just to clarify, I become an adult, got a job in IT, so I no longer have these needs.
Right. Well, you reach a certain stage where like, I just need it to work. I can't. Yeah. As much as I love tinkering, like I really just need it to work. I want to plug in the monitor. I don't want to have to like recompile my, kernel just to connect it to the Wi-Fi. Thank you.
I'm gonna say, but no, not exactly. I do that for work because I have a MacBook, but I have a personal computer with only Linux. And I precisely have an issue with my Wi-Fi, and I compile my own Wi-Fi drivers. so yes, I still enjoy some of this. But nice. If it's relatively simple, like you find a GitHub repo, clone it. It's a standard CMake script. You know how to run it, install the dependencies, and that's it. Nothing special. It's what I consider normal. No custom kernel compiling.
Totally. Yeah. And well, like anything, you can take it to an extreme. You know, and I mean that is true of literally any and every hobby. And I think it fits into that same ballpark. There's some of us who'd be like, whoa, I'm not even going near that. But others are like, what do you mean that's all you did? Like, come on. If you're not compiling everything down to exactly what you want, that's a totally different situation. So all right, so Findle, let's see. Findle fried an amp and cried. Yeah, I've been there. I mean, once the smoke escapes, then it doesn't work. Everything is smoke powered, is my understanding. And then, have you ever read the code for the Saturn V? I have not. Findle, where would he? Now I'm curious. Is it? Can I just? If I just Google, is this out on like GitHub somewhere? Findle, where is the code for the Saturn V? Oh my gosh, this is awesome. I may have to add this into one of my talks. The function to actually fire the engine is named burn baby burn. That is freaking awesome. Okay, see now I have to Google. Now you're
Yeah, I'm checking.
Saturn.
I think I recall that. Is that the it's all assembler or something like that?
Original. Oh my god, here it is. Here it is on GitHub. God, everything is on GitHub. That is crazy.
Yes.
All right, I think this is it. Well, this is Apollo 11. That's not. You're talking. Saturn.
Yeah, I ended up in the same place.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Maybe it is the Apollo 11. Is that what we're thinking, Thindle? Are we off by one here? Because that's what GitHub is showing me here. Something about the guidance computer source code. Yeah. That is amazing. A lot of readmes. A lot of readmes in here. You can compile it, apparently. It's in the public domain. Part of the source code for the Colossus 2A command module Apollo guidance computer. That is crazy. All right, so this is what Thindle's talking about. Let me post that in there.
Yeah, I always wonder, how do you do the integration testing for these things?
That is a great question. I don't think I want to know what they do there. It does make me remember one of my all-time favorite SRE stories. At least, I mean, I call it an SRE story. Maybe it's not really, but I think it's Margaret Hamilton was one of the first engineers to work on some of that code, and she found this glitch that if you were simulating a lunar landing and pressed like a pre-launch button, it wiped out all the navigation data. And so she wanted to put some error checking code in, but the upper muckety mucks were like, that's silly. We don't need that. That's wasteful. The astronauts are perfect. They're very highly trained. We'll just tell them not to press the button. And so, of course, they did press the button right around like Christmas, I remember 1961, something like that. And, luckily for them, she had managed to update the documentation so that when this happened, NASA was able to fix the problem. But yeah, I agree with Thindle very, very carefully and very thoroughly, for sure. So not the kind of software I think I'd want to work on. I don't know. Maybe,
yeah.
To each their own. So there you go. Oh, here we go. I think we got another. Yeah, there's Burn Baby Burn. All right, love it. Love it. Thank you, Thindle. That's the one. So naming things is fun. Burn Baby Burn. That is fantastic. Master ignition routine. See, now that's an engine that enjoyed their work, right? that makes me happy. Thank you, Thindle. I appreciate that.
Okay, that's like more than 1,000 lines of assembler.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. When I see those things, I really realize how lazy I've become with years.
Right. Yeah.
Because I did things like that when I was at college. I remember I had a couple of subjects, hauling assembler, writing micro devices and drivers and things like that, and doing DMA transmissions. And now I look at that, it's like, no, I cannot do that, even if I try.
Right. Well, I remember the class where we did a lot of work with circuits, and they would give you these fairly simple things to do, but then they would add a constraint. It would be, and you can't use an AND circuit. And you're like, wait, what? Because this would be like just 3 things. Like, yeah, I know. So do that with, without that. And you have to try to figure out how to make, add these different things together. It's like, oh, really? I didn't much enjoy that, especially when you're used to being able to use higher level abstractions. So, oh, wow. So Thindle read somewhere that 25% of all engineers in the US did work for NASA at one point or another during the Apollo program. Wow. That's nuts.
Okay, but I guess it's including contractors, subcontractors, and...
Right. The idea being that pretty much anybody was pulled into, because we don't care about the cost. It's all about beating the Russians to space or to the moon. And away you go. So I guess it was to the moon, since it wasn't really space.
Well, there is that story. I don't know if it... Because these quotes tend to be modified alongside the story, but I think it was Kennedy that found like a janitor and asked him, what are you doing? And I help bringing people to the moon or something like that. Or because I work in NASA anyway, and I'm the janitor, but I work in NASA. So that's my goal.
Well, I mean, you can't do that job if somebody's not cleaning up the garbage, right? So
exactly.
There you go. I mean, imagine what would happen in some of those offices. But that's fantastic. Yeah, I've often thought about that. I've spent most of my career doing enterprise web app stuff, and I was thankful I never dealt with sort of life criticality or something like, hey, if we make a mistake here, this whole thing's going to blow up and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and some people are not going to make it to the other side of that. It's like, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. Not. Oof,
well, yeah, I worked for the government in my past. Things like for healthcare, and so
sure,
it's not that critical. But yeah, sometimes you realize that if there is some silly bug, it could cause like maybe a health center to stop working for the morning, and so
that could be a problem.
Huge implications.
Yeah. Well, Thindle says he's worked in nuclear, and it's a bit different. I think that's a very delicate way of phrasing that, Thindle, that it's a bit different. I concur. Another industry I would rather not write code for.
No.
Oh man, that's crazy. Yeah, I always thought that most of my code, if something screwed up, it was going to slightly inconvenience some sort of backroom person, and not that it would be totally benign for them. It would be a big deal for them, but probably wasn't going to be mission critical. It might be embarrassing. We might have an app down for a while, but yeah, good times. So, like many of us, you started playing with code or started playing with computers at an early age, and then eventually found your way into this environment. How did you find your way to Spring? What brought you into the Spring ecosystem?
Normal business stuff. When I finished college, I started looking for jobs, and I went for the one that was paying more.
Smart.
Well, I don't know. My idea was to stay there for a couple of years, and I spent almost 10. And it was mostly business stuff, work like for banks, insurance companies, government stuff. It was a consultancy company, so it was individual projects, and it was most of it in Spring. The fun fact is that I spent my first years working with a framework that some other company made on top of Spring.
Oh.
Without having no idea what dependency injection was about.
Sure.
I just copy-pasted XMLs, because it was a Spring with XML back then. Copy-pasted XMLs from here to there, and everything was most or less templatable. So I have this CRUD screen, and I need another CRUD screen. It was extremely boring. And then someone told me like, hey, but you can do this just much easier. Let me explain to you. Like, okay, that's cool.
Oh, sure.
And then is when I started like realizing, that's interesting.
What's going on here? How did you get into starting to like contribute? And one of the things that I've talked about like with Spencer and Ryan and Craig and a few others and Olga is how do you go from I'd love to contribute, but I don't even know how to get started. I'm intimidated. Spring's been around a long time. It's obviously a very large code base. Is there any advice you'd have to either your former self or anybody who's like, hey, how can I get involved?
Well, I would say, first of all, any involvement is valid enough. So the first thing is just try going step by step. And the first thing is just reporting an issue or asking a silly question in the GitHub issue, for instance.
Right.
Like, hey, is this a valid approach to do this? Or I'm trying this and it's not working. It's amazing how many people over the years I found that they rant about frameworks or tools or anything. It's like, yeah, you try this and it doesn't work. And the hello world is nice, but then you have a complex scenario and the complex scenario doesn't fit. And then you tell them like, okay, but other than complaining to me now, have you ever tried to ask the developers? And it's like,
right.
They are not going to answer or they don't care. It's like, well, you'd be surprised because basically open source works based on feedback from people. So, or mostly feedback from people, and it's really important. Once you do that, that's the first step. Once you do that and you get comfortable, especially with GitHub, that's important to get comfortable with GitHub. The next step is, okay, there is like this silly thing, usually a typo in documentation. Please do fix typos in documentation or typos or invalid things. For instance, not so long ago, I found that there is a documentation in the, I think, a Spring native that it mentioned that it supports like Tomcat, Jetty, and some other web container. And it's not true because it supports 4. And I added just, okay, it supports this and this other. And then someone came and they, okay, let's put it in this order. And that's it. And then everyone can benefit from this silly change that it took me 10 minutes to fix, and
Right,
it has
right.
been lingering in the documentation for months.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I think that's a great point, because there's this is actually something Whitney and I were talking about last week in Atlanta, that the beauty of that beginner's mindset is you're not constrained by the baggage. You're not seeing past things. You'll notice something like that where, well, but it also works on this. Why did you put that? And maybe somebody knows that, but they forgot, or they think, oh, everybody knows that, I don't need to put that in here. And as simple as that may seem, that's still going to help somebody. You know, that small change, pointing that out is going to save some other engineer countless hours of, oh shoot, but it doesn't work on this thing, when it does. And it's the kind of thing that is easy to miss when you've been sort of neck deep in it for years. You don't see some of that stuff. And I think that's one of those really important things to remember when you're new to this. Like, come on, like, yeah, tell us what you see, tell us what we missed, and help us out.
Yeah, no, that's true. When you are inside the development, sometimes if it's a complex or long development, you just want to get on with it and you forget about documentation and things like that. That's a typical thing.
Right.
But those are just examples of a small thing everyone can do. And then when you start doing that, the next it's like one step after the other. Then it's like, okay, I see this thing in the code, maybe I can change that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it could be just a refactor.
Right.
Silly things, and then you just see fixes or improvements on new features. It's no one. Well, there are some bad people in the community, but at least in the Spring community, everyone has been so nice.
It is pretty rare to run into somebody in Spring that's not a good person. And I'd use a stronger phrase if I wasn't streaming live here, but that isn't true of other communities. And I think that's one of the things that I have really felt coming into this as someone who was not a Spring expert. I've asked a bunch of dumb questions, and people are totally cool with helping out, even when you're like, hey, this is really silly. But, to me, that's one of the real strengths of that community. And it becomes, I think, a little self-policing, that if you're not friendly, it isn't tolerated like it is in some places. But
yeah, at the end of the day, any open source project that is not friendly is going to die, because
totally
people is not going to use it. No. And there is a matter of human scale. Like, if you are not able to get more people to work into the project is not going to be able to scale to support all the users. If it's successful, all the users that it's going to be using it. And if you cannot support them, then someone else is going to start another project. And if they are more successful socially, it's going to people is going to move to the other project.
Yeah, that's another great point. I mean, there's two things I'd comment on there. One, that even small changes are useful. So I think some people are like, well, if I'm not creating something on the caliber of Gateway or Streams or something huge, well, there's no point in me contributing it. Well, even fixing typos, even small changes, small refactorings, putting in burn baby burn or something, I mean, that stuff really does help. And I think the other thing you're hinting at there is that there was a time in open source where we didn't have a lot of options, and so you had to put up with some of that. And that ship has sailed. 100% agree on that.
Yeah, now
everything sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that now everything is so simple. I still remember when you had like, okay, how can I report this issue or things like that.
Right.
Now it's just going to GitHub. There's no
it's definitely improved. Well, Thindel, I can't speak about any Spring.NET ports. I would throw you at Layla on anything having to do with trying to put. I know Steel Toe's out there. I can talk to that. And then this is a great question, Thindel. How did we end up with so many great DevRel people? Well, I can tell you that's because of Tasha. It's all Tasha Eisenberg. There's no getting around that. She's the best boss in the business. So that would be my answer to that, my friend. And we've got good people, and good people are attracted to good people. So. All right, what else do we have here? Let's see here. We got Darth Vikes. Darth Vikes. Are you a Vikings fan, Darth? That's the way I would read that name, Darth Vikes.
Well, I think
Apollo versus Shuttle versus Dragon 2. Oh, he is a Vikings fan. As a fellow, I assume Minnesotan, I do apologize for the Vikings. We have yet more years of mediocre football in front of us, I'm sure. So what else are we saying here? The compute difference is amazing. Yeah, I bet it is. That's fascinating. And then Thindle asks, how did this ever work? This looks like it might work. What is this, a game? Great. Yeah, there is on Stack Overflow a question about like greatest comments ever in code, and it is a hilarious read. I recommend you look. It's closed, unfortunately, because this isn't a question. I'm like, but it's awesome. So as a developer, if you need some humor today, go check that out for sure.
Yeah, I recall that. In fact, I recall using some of those comments sometime in my life. Like, there was some like, put here the number of times you try to refactor this method that it didn't work.
Yes.
I've gone through that.
Yes. This works. Don't know why.
Exactly.
Don't touch it. Yeah, no, I love the one, increment this counter to as a warning to future developers of how much time you've spent here. But
this is sadly very typical of kind of big corporate logic for insurance and things like that, at least in my experience, because they have these complex rules, and it's just a method with all the rules and they keep adding rules, and it becomes a mess.
Yeah, I've seen some of that, and it stacks on top of itself, and you're like, okay, who didn't think to refactor this? Because I'm just adding this one other condition and another condition and another condition, and the next thing you know, it's 150 lines long. That's code that clearly did not have to go through the rigorous process that Thindle mentioned a little earlier in our comments. You write code, it goes into code review at a third party that you can't communicate with. Oh my gosh. Once they approve it, then it goes into the simulator for months. Then it goes into a hardware simulator for another. Well, so that's quite the deployment pipeline, Thindle. That I get it, right? To be clear, because the cost of a mistake is a lot higher than, oh, well, the feed's a little off today, or we showed an out of date thing in the catalog, So I totally get that, but wow, that is crazy. I mean, think about how much rigor you'd have to put into any code commit if you knew that you weren't going to find out that it was legit for almost a year. That's crazy. Wow. So let's see.
And that proves how lazy or how well used to we have become to this kind of things like continuous deployment.
Right. Well, and I know one of the things that I was always taught is that the process we use has got to fit the code in the sense of life criticality, expense, things of that nature. Obviously, the cost of a mistake in a nuclear power plant is huge, and thus worth the additional rigor of all that extra, ceremony, basically. Whereas a lot of the software I've worked on, thankfully, has not had that level of criticality to it, and you can get away with some of that.
Definitely.
I like this one. I have a display on my wall. That can't happen. That doesn't happen on my machine. That shouldn't happen. Why does that happen? Oh, I see. How did that ever work? Thindle, I think that might be software in a nutshell right there. I really do. I think that's almost all code we've ever written. Like, well, that can't happen. And then you realize I'm looking at the wrong file. That's why I thought that couldn't happen. So,
it tends to happen a lot. I mean, it's magic at the end of the day.
It kind of is, right? I mean, how many times have you had that experience where you reboot it and it works, and then you're like, I'd like to be able to explain to you why it works now, but I can't. Sorry.
Lately, a lot.
Right.
Not rebooted. The issues we are having with the product we are building in the team for VMware is that we are finding customers are using it, and then we are finding all these corner cases.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how do I reproduce that? They report like, okay, after a week, I get this. There is an error here after a week. It's like, okay, let's see how we can reproduce that.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think that, to your point, we see Happy Path very well as developers. It's the edge cases that are so much harder for us to spot. And I also think that as software continues to grow and take on this scale, there are just certain edge cases that are only going to happen when it's got to be running for so many days, and it's got to have just this right collection of things. And then trying to disentangle that and figure out, oh, here it is. It's not almost nothing we run into anymore is one thing. It is this collection of things that has to happen at the right time in the right order. And you only see that in certain cases. You know, I had a test I wrote once that failed, and I didn't realize it was going to fail when I wrote it. And then when I went into the broken build to look at it, I realized this is going to fail every 7 years. It's just one of those weird date things that just recurs. But you don't think about it when at the time, oh, okay, yeah, this test passes, and it passes literally hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And then that one combination happens. And you're like, oh, there we go. You know,
I had one story like that also. Someone made a test that was checking against the 1st of January, and it just failed. The pipeline failed on the 1st of January, and
right.
And we look at the code and we realize, like, okay, this test is going to fail every year.
Yep. And then you ask yourself, how do we fix that? What do we do about it? Do we just put a note in there? We put a magic comment in? If it's January 1st, ignore.
In that case, it was easy. It was funny because the person, you didn't need to test it on the 1st of January. It's just that the person that wrote it probably copied from Stack Overflow some example about date parsing, and he used that specific date. And it was like, okay, just use some other date and it will be fine.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
But it took us some time to realize. Then we laugh. Like, okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. You know, or we make a calculation mistake, or as Darth Vikes points out here, you import something as 8, but it was megabytes versus gigabytes. You know, I mean, well, there was that. Speaking of NASA, since we started talking about that earlier, there was that infamous case where NASA launched something at Mars, and part of the team was using feet per second, and part of the team was using meters per second, and then it crashed into the planet. Wah, wah.
I heard that many times. I really would like to read like an official statement, because I struggle to believe that's true. I cannot believe that a bunch of scientists, like the top tier, no one decided to say, hey, are we using the same units?
Well, of course we are. Everything's in meters, except we use feet. So why are you on the metric system? Isn't everybody imperial? Or be like the UK and use both? So yeah, true story. Newton meters versus Newton yard. Yeah, I think it was something to that effect, Vendel. It was good. It was good times. It's good times. And then epic overflow error in Microsoft Exchange back in January 2022. I don't remember that one. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. I don't remember that one either. But if Vendel says,
I wouldn't be surprised.
I believe it. Speaking of that, I wanted to go back to another one of Thindel's comments here. Thindel's given me all sorts of great material today. I do appreciate that, my friend. So the big red button at the plant I worked at, it was an instant $1.5 million cost of $200,000 per day. And I think this is becoming a lot more common, to be honest with you. I mean, you look at the kinds of software that people are writing today, and if this is down, this is costing us millions of dollars at a crack. I mean, think about our friends at the cloud providers. You know, you go down, Amazon East is down for an hour, and what happens? You know, like a third of the internet's down. So good times.
Yeah, and we know because this has happened before.
Of course. And then it'll happen again because we're humans. So good times.
Yeah, and because all those conversations and good practices about high availability and redundancy, and we can see perfectly how everyone is putting that in practice when those things happen.
Exactly. Okay. Here's what Thindel's talking about with the epic change. Smart people took 2022-0101 and converted it to the int. An overflow. Oh yeah, good times. I can see that one. And since you brought up Linux earlier, my friend, did you know apparently year 2038? See, this is one of those things where early computer scientists never thought this stuff would still be around in 5 years or 10 years, let alone 50. So that's infinite. You never got to worry about that. That'll never be a problem.
Yeah, but if you think about that time, it makes sense. There are some explanations.
Sure.
As a general rule, everything tends to have an explanation. Back
That's
then,
fair.
if you remember, everything was custom hardware, and every 2-3 years there was a totally new system with totally new architecture and new things. It's just that. So the assumption was that there's something totally new that is going to appear, and we don't need to worry about that.
Right.
It's like x86 It's weird that it became a standard, because back in the day there were so many instruction sets for computers,
Right?
and even now we are maybe battling with 8x86 and ARM, and it's not clear what's going to happen.
Well, I'm with Thindle that there's an awful lot of, we'll call it heritage code, Thindle. I'll try to be a little more positive. And you are absolutely right about Cobalt. I mean, trillions of dollars of commerce are passing through Cobalt systems right now as we're having this conversation. And yes, absolutely. If it works, don't touch it, don't breathe on it, pour concrete on it. And that's fine right up until the point where you're like, wait a minute, we don't have anybody that can fix this. We found a new edge case. Who's going to maintain this? And I still think this is going to be one of the most interesting challenges in software. I mean, we love talking about Kubernetes. We love talking about cloud, and that's cool stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
We got a big ticking COBOL thing. And we thought if we thought like Y2K was an interesting problem, just wait till we get to the stage where the COBOL programmers start leaving them this mortal coil in greater numbers than they already have.
But then, and I don't believe much in these things, but I guess free market will apply its rules. And if there is really a need for that kind of things, salaries will explode, and people will say, okay, 20 years old people will say, okay, if you're paying me that, don't worry, I'm going to go into Cobalt.
100%. Every developer I know has a number. There is a number that they slide across the table. If you'll cover that, I will happily write you COBOL code.
Exactly.
Now
or even
my
PHP.
number is good at, yes, or even PHP, maybe even Perl. Maybe, I don't know if I'd go that far, but it will involve a conversation with my financial advisor. That's something along the lines of, I'd like to retire in 2 years to my own island, and then if that number is going to work, then I'm in. So Thindle, I don't know. Perl is fine, really. I mean, okay, I'm just picking on Perl. I shouldn't.
Yeah,
I should really pick on JavaScript.
That's an easy target.
Although I've written a lot of JavaScript. I like JavaScript. There's no getting around it. So
no, I don't like it.
Everything is getting thawed out in 2500. They needed help fixing their COBOL code. Yeah, I can see that. We're saved. We found a COBOL programmer. Wow. Yeah. I think okay. Thindle's going to find us a link to that. Oh, poor Glenn is now spun back into the mid 90s there. Sorry, Glenn. Sorry about that, buddy. Well, we should have like a trigger warning. You know, I've been watching. Christine and I watched Severance, which is on Apple TV Plus, whatever they call that thing, and it's actually quite good. If you've ever had an office job, I think you'll relate to it. But several of the episodes had that warning at the start of it that said, this does contain flashing lights and patterns, and if you're sensitive to that, you're warned. And I always thought to myself, what does that mean? Like, my son's allergic to peanuts, so when something says contains peanuts, he doesn't eat it because we know he'll have an allergic reaction. And I'm curious if you are sensitive to that and that shows up, do you watch it and then you're just on lookout, or do you just not watch it? I suppose maybe it depends how sensitive you are, but.
Well, I guess you just don't watch it at all.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm curious about. So then okay, so yeah, Perl was great for what it's made for. All right, fine. I shouldn't pick on any language.
Yeah, but that's basically a definition or justification for everything. It's good for what it's made for.
Very good point. So that's a good question, Darth Vikes. Is AWS East the default? I think that's part of it. And I think part of it too is people are almost like conditioned to want to be in East 1 because that's where everybody else is, which I don't quite understand, to be honest with you, because there are a lot of other options and there's nothing magical about that one other than I guess it was like the first one. But yeah, there we go. All right, he found the cartoon, so we'll put that here in the comments if somebody wants to check that out.
I guess East also is nice because me being in Europe, I sometimes choose East because it's closer to me also.
It's closer. Sure.
Yeah, it's either UK or West Europe or East States.
Sure. No, I can see that. That's a good point. That it is. The geography does matter, and the closer you are to the compute, the faster things is. You don't want to add latency just for the sake of adding latency. So yeah, it was good for text parsing. Yeah, that's fair. Then I'll grant you that. Yeah. I think it was a write once language, though, or at least the way people chose to write Perl was as a write once kind of language. My opinion. What else do we want to pick on here today? Well, let's see if I missed anything else in the comments here. You guys are being great this morning. I really appreciate that. This is why I love doing this, is we get feedback and it helps shape where we're going. And that always makes me happy when folks give us good questions and give us things to play around with. So
and removes the tension from us, so I don't have to think.
Right.
Job.
I mean, it's great because it just sort of distracts us a little bit there. So we came back after lunch, figured out what we were doing, and had to start. Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I mean, then, right? That if you weren't careful with Perl, it was very easy. Okay, now to be fair, lots of languages can fit into that bucket. If you write, Glenn Vandenberg, I've misabused this quote multiple times, but bad developers move heaven and earth to do the wrong thing. And he did actually inform me that I've been paraphrasing him incorrectly. And I think that's Neil Ford's fault, because I think Neil originally paraphrased Glenn incorrectly, and it's all just rolled downhill from there. So you can write bad code in any language. Am I right?
Yep. I think the main thing is that there was not a culture of testing back in the day as we have it now. And people were even happier with cryptic languages like Bash script. You can really write lines of Bash script that it's like someone needs to explain what this is doing, because there are internal conversions and Boolean evaluations and things that are weird. And without actual testing, it's hard to understand or to really guess what it's doing.
Yeah.
Now
that's a great point. Yeah, the culture of testing, the culture of having a deployment pipeline and having code analysis and everything is not been universally true in software, and is a relatively new sort of statement. And President Not True One says, I've seen my share of write-only C# code. Yeah, again, I am picking on Perl, but yeah, there's plenty of we could pick on regular expressions like this one. Thanks, Vindel. I think Raju could probably tell me what that does, but not so much me. And then having inline regex. I had to do some bash scripting, and that was not a lot of fun recently.
I also have to do my fair share, especially for the CI.
Right. So now Glenn says, was it weird or familiar to hang out with folks again at a conference? So we were at Devnexus last week, and Glenn, I don't know how you felt about it, but I would say it was both weird and familiar. I mean, it's kind of like falling off a horse. You get back into that flow a lot faster than I thought, but there was a little bit of like, you're kind of the mouse kind of sneaking out of your home, like looking around going, is it safe? And I mean, I think it was awesome just to see people and give like Spencer a big hug and give Glenn a big hug and everybody else. I mean, it was really, really nice to see people, for sure, my opinion. And I agree, Glenn. It did feel an awful lot like a reunion. I mean, it was amazing. I don't know, Bell, if you felt this way walking around, but I couldn't go more than about 10 or 15 feet before running into somebody and, how you been, what's going on, big hug, it was really nice to it's like we got the band back together again,
Yes, and it's similar. Well, in all conference or meetups, there's always this positive feeling of, hey, we're meeting together, because especially if you move not only in Spring but in other communities, it's like, okay, you meet people across all the world, and those conferences are just excuse to meet, and get our companies to pay for the expenses, and even now that was amplified 1,000 times after so much time. It was like everything felt like 1,000 times more intense. It was really, everyone was so anxious to hug and meet and everything.
Well, I think we took it for granted, and that's something that the last couple of years has really reinforced to me, that any of that stuff can disappear, and that you have to be very appreciative of the time we do have to get together with our friends and our family and do the things that we love to do. And so, 1,000% agree. It was definitely more intense from that perspective, because we just hadn't seen each other for so long, so there is that distance, I think, helped in that regard.
Totally. I mean, I always say that to a lot of people, to the point that some people tell me I'm annoying, but At least to me, the pandemic has helped me to put things straight and spend more time with family and things like that.
Right.
I moved back from Barcelona city to my hometown, for instance.
Right.
And I tell people, like, if after these 2 years you have not reached the conclusion that, as you said, this is not for granted, you need to take the most of the time you have with your family and friends. I don't know what's going to change that for you. I mean,
yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, so Thindel met a friend for the first time in a couple of years, both in risk groups, talked a lot on time. I completely agree, Thindel. I mean, that was my experience last week, being around people again, just how much I missed seeing them. And many of them I have chatted with either, over a Zoom or something similar, or on Slack. I mean, I chat with people all the time, but it's different being in person. It's different going out to eat with folks. And I think that's a huge part of it. And yeah, I know what you mean, Thindel. There's definitely still going to be some hesitation there. And I definitely felt that way in certain settings where you're like, okay, this might not be the best situation. And, I hope, Thindel, you avoid it as well. That would,
definitely.
I hope anybody who does get it, that it's minor.
Yeah, I mean, we are not out of the situation yet, depending on where you are and your circle. And for instance, I'm taking precautions also since I came back. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's honestly tough. You have to acknowledge the situation, but at the same time, it's so easy to carry it along with the positivity and everything.
Right.
In fact, I'm just. Well, me and other people were talking about, like, okay, now which is the next one? Okay, now we want another one.
Yeah. No, I agree, Glenn. It's you have to maintain your guard, but by the same token, there is a cost to not being around our friends and not having those experiences. I mean, our dinner was amazing. It was so much fun just to be with everybody for a few hours, and I think for most of us, that's worth the occasional risk.
Yeah, and that's coming from me and my friends and family. No, I'm not the most social person in the world.
Well, I sure enjoyed having dinner with you, so it all worked out there. Yeah. And, let's see, what else does Glenn have? Yeah, a lot of, that's a great point, Glenn, that there's a limit to what we can do virtually. And I don't think we need to be in an office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, to get stuff done. I think that ship has clearly sailed, but there is still something to getting together on some cadence, whatever that is. And I agree 1,000%. Then it's all about the hallway track. And I make no bones about it. That's part of why I created this Twitch stream, was to give me an excuse to hang out with people for an hour and a half on a random Monday and try to recreate that experience. So y'all are doing a great job, helping us here. And this is what I really missed, was having these kind of interactions. It's something I enjoyed so much last week. Oh yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, President. Not sure that someone's still recovering. It absolutely can hit some people harder. And, I think that for me is one of the things that still gives me pause, that you just don't know who's going to test positive, who's going to be fine, who's going to have a rough go. I mean, it's tough. And yeah, I agree, Glenn. We gotta be careful. So yeah, totally agree. So Thindel, is it a bank holiday for you today, Abel?
Me? Yes.
Okay. I assumed as much. It's always funny, these different holidays that we all observe across. So I was thinking about this morning when I was pondering what kind of things you and I should talk about. One of the first time I ever went to Spain, my wife and I went over there for a couple of weeks. This would have been more years ago than I care to admit. And we landed in Barcelona, and we had arranged a car to pick us up. This was well before ride sharing, and we had done that on our honeymoon, and it just kind of took one variable out of play. There's going to be a car, you just get in, you don't have to worry about it. So we land after, being on the airplane for many hours, and we're like, where's the car? There's no car. And so Christine called the travel company. She speaks Spanish, and no answer. So then she calls like their main Madrid number, and somebody answers, and they're like, well, we'll try to get a hold of the Barcelona office, call us back in 10 minutes. So she calls back, and they're like, we can't get a hold of the Barcelona office either. We're like, the heck do we do now? You're jet lagged, you're tired. And so we ended up taking like the bus or something into town, and then the day or two later we go find the travel office, and it turns out the weekend we had landed was a large celebration in Barcelona. So all of Barcelona was basically shut down. And when we went to explain this to the travel agency, the woman was just like, "Oh, Madrid, they don't know what they're talking about." Like it struck me as something that was so interesting that Madrid and Barcelona aren't that far apart.
No.
And yet Madrid had no idea that Barcelona was having this big old festival, and that of course there's no drivers that day because the whole weekend were shut down or whatever it was. I don't remember all the specifics, but
yeah, I'm curious what celebration was it?
How, I don't know. I'm not sure where she.
Yeah, we're not going to guess now.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'll get back to you.
But we have like different. You have to. The truth is that Spain, it's more like a building of several apartments. Yeah. So we get along and we share expenses and things like that. But each one has its own particularities, each flat. So that's kind of the situation. And we have different holidays depending on the region and on top of the whole national situations and languages and stuff. But yeah, it could be. But I don't think that would happen now, especially because maybe that was before the Olympics in the 92.
No, it wasn't that long ago. This was post-Olympics. This would have been 2000, 2002, something like that.
So that's weird.
Maybe.
Basically,
2005, Christine's telling me.
The city and many companies just take care of tourists. So
yeah,
it's weird that they forgot about that they needed to pick up someone.
I mean, it happens. It happens.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
It could happen.
It's the nature of the beast. So it's apparently a holiday in Sweden as well. So we got that going for us. So yeah, it was.
It's Easter.
So right, now that one makes sense. I can see that. It's a good spring holiday. So let's see.
Yeah, but you see, for instance, today is holiday in Catalonia, but not in Sevilla.
Oh, okay, of course.
Sevilla have like more celebrations the previous days, and we have this special celebration today. So it's a little bit. At the end of the day, by law, all regions in Spain have the same holidays, or more or less.
Okay.
Maybe there's a difference in 1-2 days.
Sure.
But we pick and choose on specific days.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Thindel, I'm sorry you have a friend who's ill. That's not cool. That's disappointing. I hope everything works out okay. I know that can be very scary. Good luck with that. Okay. Some friends of mine have an apartment down there. Incredibly Swedish. This is one of the things that I love about Europe is there's so much more mingling, I would call it, right? So our last night on that particular trip, we were in Madrid and we went around the corner and had dinner, whatever we had, and we were chatting with this couple that was there for the weekend from the UK. And as an American, I just thought that's crazy. And then of course you realize, well, if you live in the UK, it's like a 2-hour flight.
Yep.
And you go, oh, well, that'd be like us going down to Florida or something. It's totally different. And to me, that is one of the really neat things to see how much of that influence is there around all of Europe. But let's see, did I miss anything else in our wonderful? You guys are fantastic today. What a great group. I really appreciate that. So, if you live in Texas, it's kind of the same. Well, I mean, Texas, you can drive all day and not leave the state. Texas is huge. There's no getting around that. It's like its own country, frankly.
That's the thing. Everything in Europe is just smaller, especially in Spain.
Right.
Because outside of the big cities, Barcelona, Madrid, everything is relatively small for foreign people. Even for European standards, most towns are small, which I find much nicer.
Oh, sure. Well, and so Thindel had a friend from Mexico, overlaid a map of Mexico over Europe. Oh, wow. I never thought of that, but you're right. It is. Well, we had good friends of ours that were living in Paris for a few years. And this happened to be when the Olympics were in Italy, and they just, drove down and saw some of the Olympics because, well, why not? It's not that far of a drive. And I know I did a workshop once in Basel, Switzerland, and people came up from Italy, and I thought that's crazy. And you're like, well, it's like a 2-hour train ride. And you're like, oh, right, got it. That's different, to say the least. I wouldn't take I guess that would kind of be like going from I don't know, Chicago to Milwaukee or something. It's a drivable thing and not too terrible. So crazy. Let's see what else. Well, we got off on some tangents I wasn't expecting, to be honest with you, Bill.
It's fine.
I know. I mean, that's what this is all about. It is literally the hallway track. So there was, I know Glenn made a comment earlier. I wanted to go find that here. If I can find it. Where is it? So Glenn says that I probably saved your life by not feeding you Southern food.
I saw that before.
So I think Glenn needs to defend his cooking. Although Southern food does tend to have a lot of butter, but it is very tasty, in my experience.
Yeah, but and maybe also it's a cultural thing. We have a strong thing about butter in Spain. We are used to olive oil.
Oh yeah,
So
olive oil's tasty. That's tasty.
Butter feels like a cheap replacement.
Well, and Neil Busing popping into our wonderful comment here. Good morning, Neil. Good afternoon, Neil. It's afternoon, isn't it? Yeah, it is afternoon. Yeah, meet up on the other side of the metro is too far. Well, but to be fair, Neil, if you have to go from corner to corner, it's going to take you like a good hour. So, that's just reasonable. I totally get it. I understand that one. I don't know if I could just hop on a train. I'd totally go from Sweden to Berlin. Why not? Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, Findle wants to know about brisket. Did you get to have any brisket while you were in Atlanta, or any barbecue? Okay, I failed you, and I apologize. I really should have taken care of you there. That's on me.
To be honest, it was with the conference and everything. We were just finishing the day very exhausted, and only I had like a spare day the last day, and I did the typical. Okay, what's closer to the hotel? Aquarium and just the Martin Luther King Memorial and just walking through the city. I usually like just to walk through the cities to see the environment more than just, okay, going to the metro to this place and then metro to this place. You don't really see the city, and it was nice. And then just take the plane and go back home.
Totally. Well, so Glenn says next time be sure to take you to a good barbecue place, and I'm going to echo Findle's comments. Brisket is definitely one of the best things you can eat in a good barbecue for sure.
What is brisket?
Brisket, yeah. So the beauty of barbecue is they cook it for a really long time, and so it just melts in your mouth. It's just amazing. I mean, I guess if you're a vegan, it's not as much fun, but for the rest of us, it's pretty.
I mean, if you're a vegan, you're not having much fun anyway.
Well, I mean, I have to admit, I felt bad for Spencer, and I understand that for health reasons, I get it. It seems I would be challenged on that. I do enjoy bacon.
To be fair, I'm trying to reduce my meat consumption lately.
Sure.
And for instance, I don't buy meat. The only meat I consume is things I order.
Sure.
But I'm not going to bitch around if you offer me a good steak.
Yeah. Well, and we did have a good steak on Wednesday, so the system works there. So yeah, if you come back in October for Spring One tour, we will take care of you. There will be barbecue.
That's the one in San Francisco?
Well, there's a Spring One tour event in Atlanta. So we're kicking off Spring One tour actually next week in Chicago. Let me. I even got a banner for this because this is how on top of things I am with Streamyard. Our very first in-person Spring One tour since the pandemic shut everything down. We were supposed to be in Seattle, and then that one got canceled. That was like in March, like beginning of March, and that's when I kind of knew this was going to be serious because we canceled that show. So we will be back next week in Chicago. I'm very excited about that. Looking forward to that in a very, very big way. And I think that's going to be awesome sauce. And let's see, there was so Findle got into the breakdown on the brisket. So yeah, it is a piece of meat that you really do need to cook for a very long piece of time, and then it just falls off the bone. And
what piece is it? Is it beef? Is it pork?
Oh, it's beef. I don't remember from what part of the cow exactly. I know Craig would be able to tell me. But yeah, it is very good. Texas knows how to do barbecue.
Yeah, I Google it.
Yeah, Austin. If you
Texas,
say Austin 3 times, I instantly gain 3 pounds because there's so much good food to there, and it is amazing. Yeah,
we also have our fair share of barbecues tradition here, and also I have family from Argentina.
There you go.
So Yeah, it's hard to meet or hard to beat an Argentinian asado.
That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've had some very good meals in Barcelona, to say the least. Do you have any favorite spots? Since I think I'll be back there in July when I'm hanging out with
Not
you all.
really. I'm very bad with these things. And I was living in Gracia, which is like the fancy place. But the thing is that there are so many good places that usually when someone comes, it's like, okay, let's go through the street and whatever place you like, let's go in and it's going to be nice. There was a couple of bars that I tend to be a lot. And they had like great, like the one that we went the other day, but not fancy, like normal.
Okay.
But you have the same dishes. And you can keep ordering and it's really nice.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Like yeah.
I love that stuff. There's something to be said for that kind of dining.
Yeah,
so.
it's like in a square, so it's nice, the moonlight and everything.
So how did you get involved with organizing a conference? And this is one of those things where I think a lot of people sort of misunderstand how much work goes into organizing a conference. I mean, they're like, oh, a conference just sort of happens. It's like, no, much work.
I use the analogy of, imagine a movie. You see a scene that lasts for 30 seconds. And you say, okay, there are the actors, there is the lighting, the camera, the director. But before that, there is the screenwriter. There is the person taking care of the accommodations for the whole team to be there at that place. There is the person that needs to find the place and do all the paperwork. So you can, for instance, book a street to record that day. And then there is all the work after that for edition of the... So there's a lot of things involved so that you can enjoy that 30 seconds.
Right.
And that's the same for a talk. And imagine only for a talk. So imagine the whole conference, all the catering, food, managing the sponsors, everything. It's a lot of work. And why it's because I'm crazy. I don't know. I was already slightly not really involved, but I knew the guys from the Barcelona JUG here in Barcelona, the Barcelona Java Users Group. And they have this call for volunteers every year. Like, okay, we need people to help. We cannot offer much than some free swag and a couple of free dinners. And if you want, just come here. And a few years ago, I decided to join in. And it was so enticing. I guess it's kind of a Stockholm syndrome. It was so enticing that I said, okay, that's cool. Let's do it another year and another year. And it's been like 4 years already. 4 years, I think. It's confusing now that we had this online edition and one cancelled edition, but I think, four editions, counting the online edition.
That sounds right. Yep. Yeah. Well, I having been on the other side of conference call, call for papers, it's hard going through all that and trying to thread everything together and kind of have somewhat of a coherent flow through the schedule and juggling everything that goes into it. So, man, tip of the hat. I know how much work you guys all put in on that. And then same to our Devnexus crew, I know and appreciate how much work goes into making it look easy.
Yeah, but then that has a lot of rewards. It's like the ability to meet people, get in touch with companies also. It's great. Yeah, I really recommend everyone that can, even if not in a conference, but if you have a local Java users group, just get involved.
Yeah, it's a great point. I've never met a user group. It's like, oh no, we got all the volunteers we need. No thanks. Everybody's looking for that, and it's a great way to get some of that community, give back a little bit. It's well worth it. So, good day, Fuel Snable. Good to have you here, and Thindle says hi as well. So lovely for you all to join us. And Thindle, I'm just going to tell you, there's nothing at all wrong with having a conversation about meat. So, please, I know where you're coming from, but it's fine. It's fine. I know that maybe Whitney would disagree with me slightly on that front, but
on the other side, there are a few very good vegetarian restaurants in Barcelona also.
Oh, I bet. Well, I know I had dinner with Neil Ford and his wife Candy before I left Atlanta, and there is a restaurant in New York that's extremely highly regarded, and they just went full vegan, and I'm down for it. One of my favorite restaurants in Atlanta, Vatica, is primarily vegan as well, or vegetarian, I should say. So I'm here for it. I'm a omnivore. Let's see, what else are we talking about? Okay, so we got JBCN coming up here in July. I'm very excited to get back to Barcelona, so thank you for that. I'm looking forward to that. We got Spring 1 Tour coming up live again, starting next week in Chicago. That's going to be very cool, I think. I hope. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Okay, we got another comment about vegetarian options. Oh, that's a good point, Thindle. In Texas, in Austin, you'll be fine. But in many other parts of Texas, asking to see the vegan menu will probably be met with some blank stares and, you ain't from this side of the tracks, are you? So yeah, I agree. There's a safe and a dangerous side to that. That's a very good point. I would love to know how Whitney navigates that. Sometimes we'll have to chat with her about that maybe next week. But
well, I guess that if you already know you're not going to eat any meat, you just look for a place in advance.
Right. Well, and I was very thought a lot about that when I went out with Spencer a couple of times, making sure that we were trying to be as accommodating as possible. And that's one of the things I love about Cooks is they have a full vegetarian menu as well. And be honest, some of the things that they were bringing to the table for them looked pretty darn good. So and tasted awfully good as well. Well, let's see what else do we got here. Is there anything else we want to get into? Let's see here. No, Whitney's based in Austin, so she's good. Everything is fine there. She would have no problem finding excellent food in Austin.
Yeah, Austin is the capital of Texas.
Yeah, it is. That's one of those things people forget about. It's also sort of the blueberry of Texas. It's very different from the rest of Texas, and one of my favorite cities, bar none. You find so many good places to eat. It's great culture. It's very quirky. Very weird and in a good way. It's if it wasn't always in like the mid 30s Celsius, I think it would be a pretty great place to live, but I would melt there. So I'm trying to do the calculation in my head. I may be off by a degree or two because I really have a hard time thinking in Celsius.
Yeah. Okay. Then be wary that Barcelona during the conference it's more than 30 degrees.
It's fine. I can totally handle it for it. And to be clear, in Minnesota, people forget about this. We did not actually film the Hoth scenes from Star Wars here. All right. It may only seem that way. And as much as I may be very grumpy about the fact that there were flurries this morning, we do get hot here in the summer. We have had summers where not to the same level as what you would get in Austin or Barcelona, but it absolutely can get very hot and very humid. Not maybe not as bad as Atlanta, but it isn't terrible. Yeah. So, that's interesting. Just double it and add 30. Is that all I got to do? I can probably do that. Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? So, okay. So Thindle visited Austin in early April. First waterless lightning storm. Yeah, you can get some pretty nasty storms for sure. Same thing in my neck of the woods. Yeah, that was actually happening last week. We had blizzards and thunderstorms at the same time. Well, not a blizzard, but blowing snow. All right, so if you have 6 beers, you actually have 42. All right, President Notcher, I like the sentiment here. If you have 6 beers, you actually have 42 metric beers. Okay, so is that too many? I think that's too many. That seems like
probably. That's not how I count degrees in alcohol.
It's a lot of alcohol. That's a lot of it. Don't do that.
Yeah. Also, keep in mind, beers in Spain have higher graduation than in other places.
Yeah, that's an easy one to get in trouble with when you don't realize, this is not 3-2 beer or whatever.
Exactly.
So, okay. So Fuel Snable says a friend of mine swears the carnivore diet is the only way to go. Vegetables are dangerous. Well, I do have a friend who says that's vegetables are what food eats. So I can understand and relate to that, but vegetables are good for you. We're designed to eat lots of things, in my opinion.
Yeah, my grandpa used to say salad is for rabbits. When the rabbit is full, give me the rabbit.
That's right. Just give me the rabbit. Yeah, there's definitely a Ron Swanson joke in there somewhere that I won't attempt to get in trouble with here. Get some kind of trouble. All right. Well, my friend, I could keep chatting with you for hours, much as I did last week in Atlanta, but I know it's late for you. I'll let you get to your evening. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, my man. It was really great.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So we no show for the next couple of weeks. We will be, again, as I said, live in Spring One tour in Chicago. We've got JBCN coming up here in July. I'm very excited about that. My next scheduled show is going to be with Raju again in mid-May. I can't remember the exact date. I just sent him that invite this morning, so we'll see if we're all on the same page there. Got some travel coming up again, at least in theory. I guess we'll find out. I mean, I'm guardedly optimistic that we're still going to get to do these in-person things, at least for the time being. So, oh, interesting. Let me see what Thinel's talking about here. Proof on alcohol is from the old sailor days when the crew were paid in liquor. 100 proof catches fire if you mix it with gunpowder. Oh, that's yeah. I mean, I'm going to say that is kind of a fun, and I'm with Bill Schnabel. You know, random facts are good. You know, I think that's part of the show, right? Is trying to get some random facts out there. So there you go. There's your random fact of the day. If you mix 100 proof with alcohol, 100 proof alcohol with gunpowder, it catches fire. Oh, okay. Probably fine then. No, not entirely sure how you know that, but we'll just we'll assume it's all fine. We'll just assume it's
yeah.
fine.
That's a way to finish the show with a flash.
I think yeah, we'll call it a hot flash. We'll call it a day. And again, I want to thank you for your time and attention. It was great to see you in person last week, and stay healthy, stay well. And you know, how do we end with that tidbit? Because we can. You know, oh, so Thindle only drinks alcohol to avoid the fluoridation of. Okay, that's fair.
No.
Feels stable. That's fair. Yeah, I can see it. It counteracts the fluoride. So that's probably smart. That's probably smart. So, all right, well, friends, I'm going to call it a day. We'll declare victory, as they say. And again, thank you, Abel. I appreciate hanging out with me here. We'll be back live in a few weeks. Come see us in person in Chicago and other places. That's all online. And you know, join us in Barcelona. Hard to go wrong with Barcelona, in my opinion.
Exactly.
All right. Well, you take care of yourself. I'm going to play out the bumper, and then we'll see what kind of trouble that gets us into.
Bye.